Okay, so why apartment locating? Why put this much effort into something that a college student can just do while they're going to school and then actually get a real job or become a real estate agent after college, right? And that is probably one of the biggest misconceptions about this industry and what we're doing with apartment locating, because apartment locating is actually, in my personal opinion, part of a bigger future that is on its way sooner than later. And the reason why I say that is because as we see just life and prices and homes and taxes, property taxes increase, a lot of people are renting more. We are slowly becoming a renter's nation as a country, especially if you want to live in the city, if you want to be in denser areas. Just the cost of living is so much higher than it was, say, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I mean, heck, even 2, 3 years ago, right? And so when you look at where the market is going and where and what people are doing and the trends and where is it going, apartment locating is following in that trend. And then not only that, but apartments are just becoming bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger these days, right? Now you have like Olympic sized pools at an apartment, you have cabanas at an apartment. And I'm just saying that because I'm looking at a pool right now with some cabanas. But you have Zoom rooms. Apartment properties are having covered parking. So if you park your car and it's 98 degrees outside or 102 degrees outside, you don't have to worry about walking or sitting in a hot box until your air conditioning can cool it down. Apartment properties are also in denser areas. They're closer to things to do. So once you park that car in a shaded garage, you can walk to all the places you want to go to. You can visit with friends without having to get back in your car over the weekend. So it's not just the trend of people renting, it's also the allure, the attraction of renting. Because if you go buy a home within a certain budget, you may be a little further out and you may always have to drive into the main city or drive to where you want to go, which now puts more mileage on your car. Gas prices are increasing, et cetera, et cetera. So this is where apartment locating comes in, at least for you as a professional, because most people are looking to stay in the city or within a certain area of the city, or they're just moving to a city. They may want to rent for a year or two to kind of understand, what does this city have to offer before I go invest $500,000 or more into a property. And I'm just using 500,000 because that's the around the median home price here in Austin, Texas. And most people are not walking around with 20% down on a $500,000 house. So you are truly helping them solve an immediate issue so they can figure out a more long-term solution to housing or living or where they want to live. Now, the reason why I'm even spending the time on this is because the problem that we're facing is most individuals who get into apartment locating do not treat it like a true profession. They don't treat it like the industry that it could be. They treat it as a throwaway job, right? Or it's just apartment locating. And so they don't put a lot of effort or seriousness into it. They don't actually think of it as a business. And here is where I tell them they're wrong. Here's where I tell you that make it a business. Add the professionalism to the industry, because in my personal opinion, it's only going to grow the more that people want to live in the city. So the solution to that is share what works. But also tell the truth about apartment locating. You have a lot of people who are on TikTok or on different social media platforms who are just saying apartment locating is so easy. All you have to do is this, 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 this. But then when you go and you look at it and you see the people who are in apartment locating or they're doing apartment locating, they're typically not in the industry 3 or 4 years if they're not in college, right? They don't keep doing apartment locating. And if it's so easy, then why aren't they? And I'm here to tell you, because it is work like everything else in life. However, it can be fun work. You can make it enjoyable depending on your motivations. If your motivation is just money, like anything that's where money is the motivator, it can quickly lose its appeal because you get tired of doing what's needed to make that money. But if you're actually falling in love with some of the processes, you're falling in love with some of the experiences, like for me, I love going to new apartment properties. I love to see what amenities they're offering. I love the fact that I can go to one property because you just think, oh, an apartment is an apartment is an apartment, right? But I can go to one property and see one amenity like a resident Zoom room, right? There's been a property to where they offer different Zoom rooms for their residents. It comes with a rent, nothing extra. There is no per hour charge or anything like that. So they literally have many studios for their residents. I thought that's so cool, especially in a world where video is a thing. Right? Or another complex, they offer an elevated outdoor lounge where you can just sit outside on the third, fourth floor and just overlook a park. Like, those are so cool. That's so interesting. And as a licensed real estate agent, because you have to be licensed in the state of Texas in order to do apartment locating, I can just say, hey, I'm an apartment locator. I'd love to make a video or take some pictures of any available units that you have. Do you have anything? Can I do a property tour? And they're like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And I get to see those things, right? You can see those things as an apartment locator. So the solution is find the fun in this because there is some work. There's not just it's not just the fun part, right, of going on tours, but it's also the work and the business part, right? Having to get your paperwork together, make sure you're using the right paperwork, make sure you're communicating with the apartment property so that you can get paid, so that they understand that you are the locator that has actually helped the tenant move in. You have to submit paperwork based on their processes, their workflows, right? Most apartments are companies and organizations. So they have to have certain paperwork and they have to have certain documentation in place so that you can get paid. You have to follow up on getting paid. You have to reach out to people to get paid. I wish it was just easy as, some social profiles are saying. It's just like, oh, all you gotta do is just send people over to the apartment and put your name down and send an invoice. That's it. And it's like, well, in the perfect world, yes. And that does happen. But more times than not, there's going to be a little bit more work that goes into that. There's going to be a few more steps in between each one of those steps so that you can get to the end result of helping your client and getting paid. So I'm speaking to you from being in this industry, being an apartment locator for going on 7 years. It'll be 7 years this October. That's actually about 2 months away if we want to time this. So I've seen some of the changes. I've seen some of the processes. I've gone through almost all of them, but I'm still doing it. I'm still doing apartment locating. Whereas most people who are telling you how easy it is, they're probably not doing it anymore. So when you're hearing someone say, apartment locating is so easy, are they actually still doing it? Because it can be rough. Now, the reason why I use the example of if you're in college versus not in college, and what I'm speaking on it when I say people who are not doing it, I'm mainly speaking to people who are not in college, right? Because there is a lot of college students who do apartment locating, which is fine and wonderful, but you can do it after college as well. All right. And the reason why I'm bringing up those two items, or it's going to be those two different environments and scenarios, is because most college students, the reason why there are a lot of college students doing it is because they're going to class with the people they're going to be referring. So it's easier, right? Because you're going to see your potential clients almost every day, or at least a couple times a week, because you share a class with them, right? But when you get out of college, or if you're not in college and you start apartment locating, well, now you got to think about lead generation. Now you have to think about nurturing your database. Now you have to think about keeping your client engaged because they're trying to manage life, right? If they're getting into an apartment, they're typically moving either to the city or within the city. So they're thinking about moving. If they're getting a new job, they're thinking about the new job. What do they have to get ready for? What do they have to prepare for this new job? Like, they're doing a whole lot of other things in life other than thinking about you. So those are three main things that you have to consider when you're doing apartment locating, when you're not going to class with your potential clients every week or every other day. So those are the three things, the big differences between apartment locating when you're in school and apartment locating when you're not in school. And that is, you have to generate your own leads, lead generation. 2, You have to nurture the database. So people who don't move forward with you, how do you keep them engaged? How do you keep in touch with them? How do you keep them wanting to hear from you, right? And then three, you have to manage your clients or your potential clients' life, right? The different components are part of their life, right? If they're moving, if they have a new job, if they're having to prepare for something else, right? You have to fit in there, or you have to offer enough value that your client wants to include you in those life components. So that's three things right off the top. I just want to give you some type of value right now that you have to think about when you are apartment locating while in school versus apartment locating when you're not in school. We can add two more, right? A fourth thing you have to think about is when you're doing apartment locating, say, on campus or while you're in school, student housing is completely different. That's a different process than regular apartments or apartments that are available for the general public. Student housing, they work within a certain calendar schedule. They base their availability on semesters. They're opening their availability so much time before a semester, then now it's also based on how many students are going to be to a room. I mean, it's a whole different thing. So please don't confuse apartment locating with apartment locating for student housing. Similar, but not the exact same. When you're looking at that, okay, now if you're not in class, if you're not in school, and you're an apartment locator like me who's not in college, the rules of apartment locating is going to be a little bit different than the rules for student housing. So you have to understand that transition. Another thing, right, and I guess that really makes us on five. Since we're three here, we're like, let's just play it here. The fifth thing that you have to also think about is you have to follow up with your own invoices so that you can get paid. When you're not on school, when you're not on campus, you are having to handle that. Now, the reason why I say you're having to handle that now, if you're on campus, you still have to handle it. But typically, if you're on campus, you're going to be working with student housing. So they know that they're going to see you again, and they want to make sure that everything is following in the process that they have. When you're not on campus and you're working with just a regular apartment property, they don't know if they're going to see you again, right? So their processes are going to be a little bit different, which means you may have to do a lot more follow-up to get paid. Now, that's not all the time, but I'd say it's about 50-50, maybe 70-30, that you're going to have a follow-up process in place so that you can get paid. So I always try to share with people whenever they try to give, when they're at, not give, excuse me, when they're asking me the difference between apartment locating and selling houses as a real estate agent. I always say it like this. If you are a real estate agent, a lot of your effort is going to be put on the front end of the transaction. You're going to be doing a lot more showings, right? You're going to do a lot of negotiation. You're going to do more communication with other agents in the beginning of the transaction. So that's what I mean by front load, right? You're going to put a lot of effort in the front of the transaction. With apartment locating, you're going to put a lot of your effort on the back end of the transaction, right? So helping your client is going to be one thing. Communicating with the apartment is going to be another thing. But getting paid in the follow-up and to make sure that your client is filling out the application correctly, make sure they put your name down, connecting and communicating with the apartment if your client gets busy because, they're on item number 3. They're trying to maneuver their move. They're trying to work with the new job and preparing for all that. You're bridging that communication. And then when they get approved, if they get approved, they get signed on, they get moved in, then you're going to be working with not only the leasing team, but also maybe even their marketing department or their back end office so that you get paid. So you're going to put a lot of your effort on the back end of the transaction. So that's the main difference. There isn't a such thing as more work or less work. It's where does the work apply based on what you're doing. So if you're a real estate agent, you're going to put a lot of your effort on the front end. If you are an apartment locator, you're going to put a lot more of your effort on the back end. So those are some very, very clear distinctions between those two transactions, but it's still going to take work. So you have to figure out, what do you enjoy doing? What do you have more fun doing? And I think that will be a great guide to your success by ensuring you're in the right type of transaction, real estate sales or apartment locating. That's best for you. Now, the one thing that I always like to recommend if you're just starting out with apartment locating, find someone who does it. Find someone who has done it. Don't try to figure out everything by yourself. I mean, you can, because that was my situation when I first started. I had to figure out everything myself. But if you can, find someone who's done it. Find someone who has gone through the process several times, right? At least 10 times, because there are some nuances each time. And even today, I see some new things. Even though the process is the same, there are some nuances that are a little bit different because times have changed, right? The market has changed. The amount of people that are moving changes by season, right? You have more people who move in the summer than you do than have in the winter, due to holidays and things like that. So find someone so that you're not having to experience all of the different switches and nuances and changes all at one time, all by yourself. Have someone that can guide you, even if it's just asking some basic questions, so that you have a clear view of what's happening, what's going on, and what you need to do. So, just to get you started, since we're talking already, I would say the three things that you need to think about before you get into apartment locating is number one, you have to pick a database. Find something that allows you to view apartments availability. If you start trying to just Google apartments, I'm going to tell you right now, you can start there. That's where I started almost 7 years ago. And it is painful. And it's painful because you're going to say available apartments in the north, North Austin, or apartments downtown, this, that, and the other. A lot of times, if you're using Google as your search database, remember Google caches pages. So caching means it takes copies from previous versions of that website, or maybe it did the last version that's provided in the search results was last week. Well, as you know, pricing can change daily because availability changes daily. So now when you click on that search to see what's available, and you're put down, okay, these are the units that are available because my client is looking, I don't know, for a 2 bedroom, 1 bath, and you put that down. Okay, well, that's just one unit. Do they have another unit that's 1 bedroom? And now you're doing the search, and then okay, when you make maybe 3 units because you want to send some options to your client to consider, well, you just did one property. You're going to send one option to your client? No, people like options, but at the same time, they don't want to be overwhelmed. So, number one, find something, a database, find something that allows you to reference and to see a database of apartments and their availability. Typically, MLSs do not have apartments on them. They have homes for rent or homes for lease, but not apartments. So find a database. Two, you're going to need to have an invoice. So whether you want to find one that's already being used, you want to create your own, I would recommend create an invoice template. You want to make sure that you include your information, your broker information on that, so that when you send it over, because again, we're dealing with apartment properties, they're typically corporations, so they're going to send it to another department. You want to make sure you have all of your accurate information as well as your broker, because remember, if you're doing apartment locating, you're a licensed agent in the state of Texas. That property has to pay the broker. So make sure it has your information and your broker's information on that invoice. And I kind of skipped priorities here, but last but not least, you need to have a guest card. A guest card is what most apartment properties are going to ask you for, to say that you are the reason why that tenant or future tenant has learned about their property. Okay, so make sure that you have a guest card template. Create a template. And the reason why I keep saying the word template, right, invoice template, guest card template, is because you don't want to have to create these from scratch for every client that you're working with. You want to have something that makes it quick and easy to just update a few points, update a few properties, update a few fields, so that you can send that right over. I guess here's the sixth thing. I know we covered 5 with apartment locating. You also have to remember the sixth thing I would say to remember about apartment locating is it is a fast-paced transaction. It happens quick. Most people who are looking for apartments, and have come to you have already been looking, they've started their search, and they are looking for an apartment because they have to move quickly. So this is a fast-paced transaction. You have to know that going in. So if someone reaches out to you, or a prospect or a prospective client reaches out to you and they say, I'm looking for an apartment, and they say they email you, or you get a questionnaire, or they text you, say at 1 o'clock in the morning, excuse me, not in the morning, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, try to respond back to them the same day. Like, it's not one of those transactions where you can say, oh, okay, well, this is past my response time, or my responsive time, and I'm gonna respond back to you first thing in the morning. I'm telling you, that will hurt you more than it helps you, because if it's in the afternoon, that person is already in momentum. They're already looking for or have found another solution by the time you respond to them at 9 o'clock a.m. the next morning, right? So understand, move quick, same day if you can. Typically, most people aren't looking for apartments after 6 or 7 p.m. because most apartments aren't even open. The office closes at 5, 6, 6:30 p.m. on the weekdays, right? So know that going in, this is a fast-paced transaction. You have to be able to move at the speed of the client within reason. And I say within reason because there are some people who may text you and email you at 11 o'clock at night. Well, there's nothing you can do at 11 o'clock at night. But if that's the case, make sure you respond to them first thing in the morning, or I would say before 10 a.m. the next day, so that they know that you got their message. They may just be emailing you or texting you at that hour because they want to just make sure the action got taken while they focus on other things, moving, new job preparation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the reason why we've created Locators Hub, because we want to help you save time, save frustration, but we want to elevate the industry so that we have more locators who are doing it, who are not in college, or who are doing it long term. You're not just doing it for 2, 3 years, that you actually found a way to keep doing this after your initial, getting your license for the first time, or you're just getting into real estate again, or maybe you've just graduated college and you kind of like it, but you're like, well, now what? Because now this nuance has changed. I'm not really dealing with student housing anymore, Marcus. We want to make sure that we are able to help all people, because all tides raise all ships. So I hope this has been helpful. I'd love to hear back from you. If there's anything that I've missed, or if you have questions, feel free to leave it in the comments or shoot us a note. We also have Locators Hub to help as a resource if you kind of want to leverage that as well. There should be a link in the description below for 25 myths and truths about apartment locating. I think that will get you a great start in your journey, or at least jumpstart if you already are a locator. And I think there's also a bonus video after you download that to give you a little bit more on what we touched on today. So here's to your success. I hope it helps you. We'll keep putting content out around this, and hey, I'll keep working in this as well. So as things change, we can share it, and we can all grow and rise on those tides together.